everybody, it's me again. So this time, with the success of my, everybody seemed to like the tips for knitting that I wish I'd known when I started video. I'm gonna do the tips for drop spindles that I wish I'd known when I started video. So here are 7 tips that I have put together that I think there's 7 things I wish I'd known when I started drop spindling. So here you go. So, first official tip is there's lots of different types of spindles and they're all kind of good for different purposes. So, the one that I teach on in my local classes and also on my online course is the old traditional top whirl spindle. And I like this one because it's got a good weight to it. It's a normal size spindle, I would say, and the weight helps to pull down on the fiber, which helps encourage the twist run up, which I enjoy. And most importantly for beginners, I like this type because you can stick it under your arm or in between your knees if you're sitting. And how that works is you spin and you get the twist built up in here, and then when you get all your twist built up in there, you stick it under your arm, and then that way your hands are free to draft and you're not like all worried like what's this doing? Like is it gonna fall on the floor? Is it safe under your arm? It's a little bit, it's not quite as like smooth as just letting it spin down, but it definitely, especially when you're learning fiber basics, the twist and park method is a good one. So that works very well with your classic top whirl spindle. The opposite of a top whirl spindle would be the bottom whirl spindle, and it is where the whirl is just on the bottom. So your hook's at the top, your whirl's on the bottom, and like I said, I like this for all the same reasons. The only like drawback is it would be a little weird to put under your arm. You could still do it, but just not as easily. And this little guy's actually cool. He's from, this is a 3D printed spindle, and it's from Acreworks, which is my friend, and he also, that company is out of Knoxville, Tennessee, which is also where I live, and we're in the same spinning guild. So this one's cool because you can move the whirl from the bottom to the top easily, so it can be both. So you should definitely check out Acreworks. And this is a bottom whirl spindle. This is an example of a Turkish spindle, which I would not recommend this for maybe, well, you could if you were a beginner, but just there's a little bit, you know, there's more moving parts, if you will. This one is beautiful. It has narwhals, and it came from Snyder Spindles, which I will also drop a link. And they have a YouTube channel too with lots of great spinning videos. So you should check out their YouTube channel. And the benefit of this is this type of spindle is you're actually making a center pull ball. So you can see how you're winding it around that, and then when you're done, the middle part actually pulls out, and then you can get your center pull ball out. So that's really nice. And the other benefit of this Turkish type spindle is they just spin really well. The Turkish spindle, I'd say, probably free spins for like the longest of any of my other spindles. It would, once again, be a little bit harder to stick under your armpit. I would say this would be a good, like, second spindle. Like, learn to spin, I would say, on a top whirl, and then these are really fun, especially if you like thin, and they're pretty, and they look impressive when they spin. And like I said, they are nifty because they make the little top whirl, but there is a little bit more advanced wrapping involved on doing that, and like I said, they're just kind of a different beast. But there's this kind. If you really wanted to get fancy, and this is also from Snyder Spindles, this is a Scottish style spindle, which I will not try to butcher the official Gaelic pronunciation of this because it'll just be bad. So we're going to call this the Scottish style spindle, and you can find it on their website as well. But it also makes a center pull ball because you bring it down and secure the yarn over here, and then you wrap the center pull ball around the bottom. This one has probably the shortest spin time because it doesn't have so much of a whirl. It's just got a weight. This one is really cool if you get into collecting spindles, but I would not want to learn on this one. So this one I would also say would be a more advanced spindle. And if you are interested in giant spindles, there's this one, which is sort of I picked up at a fiber show from the Dancing Goat, so you can Google them. I don't know if they have a website you can shop off of, but this is a Cherokee style spindle. I've been told it is not exactly historically accurate, but I'm not here to teach you history. The point with it is it's a floor spindle. So you get a dish like this, and it actually goes on the floor. So this part goes like off to the side, and you sit down and you twist this on like your thigh. So if you are not so much into standing, or you just really enjoy having a giant spindle, this would be nice. I think it would be fun to learn on. It was pretty easy. You could definitely do the park and draft method, even though it is technically a giant bottom whirl, because, you know, you just would stop spinning and it just sits there and gravity helps you. So this was harder to find. But yeah, this would be a floor spindle or a Cherokee style spindle. I think the difference is they do make theirs with a hook, which I think is really nice. And like I said, it was Dancing Goat. I think they might have a YouTube channel too. So please look them up. They can answer questions on this way better than me, but this has been really fun. And I do actually think it would be a good one to learn on if you're more into sitting versus standing. So that is all my rundown on different types of spindles. So as you see, I would recommend starting with maybe a top whirl would be your kind of most basic and I think easiest to learn on. And then once you learn kind of, hey, I like doing thin yarn, or I want to do like big yarn, or, you know, whatever type of yarn you want to make, you can then, or hey, I want to take it with me in my purse, then size would come into consideration. But there's definitely, don't get stuck on just one type of spindle. There's lots of different ones out there that suit different needs. So that's long and rambly tip number 1. On the same note, so not only are there different types of spindles, but there's different types of fiber. So my other tip would be learn your fibers, because that's half the fun of spinning anyhow. And different, basically, fiber types have different, it's called staple length. It's the length of the fiber. So like some, like merino, which is super popular, and here we go, have, this is probably what you'd find in a lot of like learn to spindle kits. Is merino roving, so this is real basic, and it is very soft, which is why everybody likes it, and then everybody recognizes it from most like mill spun yarns. You know, I feel like you'll see on the tag like merino, but it has, I like merino, but it does have a shorter fiber length than say a like Cordell or BFL, so you can definitely spin with it. I would recommend starting out with kind of a longer fiber though, but this is a merino with a shorter fiber, and then this is more like a BFL, and it's got a longer fiber. And the benefit of the longer fiber is it twists. You can pull it thinner, and because it's longer, it's got more, you know, it's not breaking on you as quick as something shorter. I actually, what I teach on a lot is, this is some hand-dyed Cordell. I love Cordell, and it is a good longer, not super long, but longer length fiber, and it's very slippy, I feel like, where it's easy to draft, and it's got the longer fiber. This is what I use a lot in my drop spindle workshop, like I said, either both locally, and I do have a course, and this is what I do most of my filming in. So if you can get your hands on some Cordell, which hint, hint, I think you should, depending on if it's in stock or not, be able to find my stuff on my site. But if not, there's Fibercrafty or your local yarn shop or your local farmer. But something with a longer fiber is definitely, I think, easier to learn on, just because you're not having to worry about the fibers constantly coming apart and breaking on you. So that would be my recommendation on, you know, just pick a fiber that is appropriate to learn on. And then once you get good, you can then venture off to other exciting fibers. So that brings me to tip number 3, which is the different weight of spindle also has a lot to do with what different types of fiber. Okay, let me start that sentence over. The different weight of spindle can make it easier or harder to spin different types of fiber, keeping the fiber length in mind. So, for example, this is, here we go. This is a lighter little top whirl spindle, and this is some cotton, which cotton can be spun on a drop spindle, but it is kind of a pain in the butt, and you'll see why. Cotton has this little tiny, because it's a plant, little fiber length. So as you see, cotton is definitely, you gotta have, with shorter fibers, a lot of twist in there to get them to hold together. And so if you had something that was heavier, A heavier spindle is going to be pulling those fibers apart before the twist gets in there, and also probably not twisting maybe as quickly. So this little spindle is what I would use for that, or the little 3D printed one would also be great, but I have this one all rigged up. This is just a lighter, little bit smaller top whirl spindle, and so that definitely, because it spins pretty quickly, but it's not too heavy, so it lets the cotton actually have a chance to twist before just breaking. So lighter spindles I would recommend for shorter fibers instead of heavier ones. So that would, like, once again though, cotton, don't do cotton or short fibers. You've been practicing a while, or you'll want to like beat your head against the wall. So that's some cotton. And then the heavier one, like I said, any of the wools I just talked about are great on, I feel like, any of the other spindles. But for something like cotton or alpaca, maybe a lighter spindle would probably be a safer bet. Okay, next tip. You can actually start spinning without using a leader thread on a drop spindle, which is exciting. And I feel like not normally, people don't tell you that. When I first started spinning, the spindle I got, and I feel like a lot that you would buy, actually came with like a leader thread. And a leader thread's just like a piece of yarn, hand spun or otherwise, that's just kind of already tied on there, with the idea being that you then attach your fiber to that piece of yarn and then get the twist going. And I feel like that's how most people are kind of shown to start, and I was shown by my local drop spindle guru. She was like, oh, you don't need to leader thread, you don't need yarn to make yarn. So I of course wanted to be cool like Barb, and so I was like, we'll have to learn she showed me how to do it without a leader thread. So this one, you can see, we didn't use yarn to make yarn. We just started with the fiber itself. And how that goes is you're getting the twist, you sort of sandwich a little bit of the fiber over the hook, and then you have to kind of hand make yarn, and it is a little bit harder to get going. Get the twist going, and you pre-draft out enough, so pretend that I just pre-drafted this out, that you get enough to then be able to bring it down and start the wrap that way, and then bring it back up. And then once you do that, that was kind of the hard part, is like you have to make enough yarn before, to get it down to do the twist. And then once you do that, you're like off to the races. So then you just are, attaching the fiber to this, but that way you don't have the leader thread. And it is, like I said, the first couple times you do it, it is a bit more of a pain. And here, I'll try to do a quick little demo for you. When I say you're kind of sandwiching the fiber, and this is of course like hardly any fiber, what I mean is you're kind of draft it out a little bit and put it over it that way, and then get some twist going in it. And then you like hand make the yarn up enough to bring it down. So it is a bit more of a pain to start with, but I actually found it pretty hard trying to get the fiber to like get the twist. I felt like the mill spun yarn that was my like leader thread, it's equally much of a pain to get the twist from that to like grab onto the fibers, I felt like. So it looks less intimidating, but it's annoying, and then you end up with this other fiber that's kind of bunchy down there. And it's just nice. It's nice to be able to like pick up some fiber, pick up a spindle, and just attach it and start spinning instead of having to like have this other yarn involved. So I do have more of that, like I said, on my online course. So if you're really curious on doing that, I'm much more in depth on how to get that done, but I don't have enough time now. But that's the general idea, is you get it attached and then you don't have to use a leader thread. Okay, my next tip that I figured out after drop spindling a while is when you first start, you get very hypnotized by the magical spinning spindle. And so, at least with me, I wanted to like keep staring at the spindle because I was so nervous about it. It does, they kind of go, and then they kind of stop, and then they might even kind of start going back the other way, which isn't good, so you do kind of want to get it before they do that. But I got so sucked into watching that to make sure that it wasn't like gonna drop or that it was still spinning, that I wasn't paying as much attention to what I actually needed to be, which was the business end of things up here, which is the drafting. So I recommend, if you've advanced past the twist and park method we talked about earlier, you'd get it twisting and then just ignore the spindle. And then pay attention to your hands and the actual drafting. And just have good faith. This is where the weight I was talking about is actually pulling down on this. So you can kind of, do this, and then I'm just paying attention to my hands up here. And then if it stops spinning, you can reach down and kind of get it spinning again. Draft a little bit, still spinning. draft a little bit, and then maybe give it another twist. But I'm not, you see, I'm paying attention to what I'm doing with my hands, not the spindle. So that was definitely helped me with spinning. So stop staring at the spindle. Okay, last official tip is pre-drafting is magical. And what pre-drafting is like I said, this is my merino. So if you did get a like merino braid dyed or otherwise from like your local yarn shop or online, when I first started spinning, I pretty much got this. I think I pulled it into like a lump like this size. And then I was like, all right, cool, let's spin this. And then I also, like I said, I had leader thread. So then I was like attaching this big old thing to the leader thread because I was like terrified. I didn't want it to break. I was like really weirded out about it breaking. So my first yarn that I made on a drop spindle or ever literally looked like this. It was like a rope. It was because it's hard. It's hard to draft from like a big old blob like this, especially if it's like merino, like an art bat or something that's more airy. You can kind of draft from like a corner. So, but for starting out, I feel like it's kind of hard you're like fighting this whole big wad. So if you are going to use, especially merino or something with shorter fiber that's already in a roving form, this is pre-drafting. It's where you are kind of pulling it into strips. And so that's already making it like thinner. So it's already drafted a little bit for you. So then when you're spinning, see, it's way easier to pull on this little bit than it is to try to fight the big blob. And the added benefit of that is, especially like I said, merino's a little shorter fiber, but if you want to use it and you're starting, because you're not having to draft it as much, you can get the twist going. And then basically when you get to the end of this, you can just take your next little, I call them ribbon of fiber, and then you're just attaching one end to the next, to the next, to the next. So it kind of, you're not having to, it gives you a little bit of instant gratification, and it definitely makes it easier to handle. So nobody told me about pre-drafting. You should definitely do that if you're starting out. So yay, pre-drafting. Okay, bonus tip time. You can always, as you've been watching me do this, because I teach all my classes without any extra tools, you're normally just holding your fiber in your hand, but then you end up with your arm in kind of like this weird angle. There is a really ancient style tool, not that the spindle isn't ancient style, but it was sort of the sister of the spindle back in the day, and they originated, I believe, in ancient Rome or Greece, and I'm sure somebody will get on here and make a comment telling me specifically, but we're going to say ancient Rome or Greece is what I mainly heard, called a distaff. And this one my friend made me from Tailspin Farm, so it looks very non-traditional, but and I'll add a link to this too. It has a little felted Angora ball, so how cool. But the distaff is basically a stick with the loop on the bottom and usually something on the top, and you take it, and I always thought it's like what you see in the pictures or on Roman pottery, like the women holding the stick with all the stuff. I thought it was just like a fiber like holder, like to keep it up, off the floor or whatever. But actually the benefit of it is if you wrap the fiber on here, and then, I don't know, some people like to stick their finger like through the loop. I think I like to kind of put my pinky through there. I haven't used this in a while. But the idea is that, let me wrap this up, is that you use them together like this. And you see I had way too much, so we're still wrapping. So we're wrapping this up. And by using it, see, my elbow is now down, which it makes it way easier. And you can see my other YouTube video on the talk. Kim Crawford came to our local Spinners Guild, and she's the one that taught us all about distaffs. And she said it was, because you're back in ancient Rome, you had to spin like your whole family's wardrobe worth of yarn. So like, your shoulder would be killing you. So by having it wrapped on this, see, it keeps your shoulder down. And it is a little bit, you kind of have to, but then see, I'm drafting off the distaff instead of, and the whole time I'm doing this, look, it's like magic. My shoulder is down. So like I said, this one is from my friend at Tailspin Farm, where we get our Angora fiber from here at Crafty Housewife Yarns. I will drop a link. I love this one because it's made out of metal, so it's kind of, you can adjust the height on it, and it's cool because it has a felted ball on the top. But it's very affordable, because I was actually having a hard time. I even tried to get like a local woodworker here in Knoxville, because I wanted to make some distaffs because people were asking for them off my YouTube videos, and they were kind of hard to find. So I will drop a link to this one, because it is affordable and light and easy to get in the mail, easy to shove in your bag, and this is the one I use. And it definitely, you can see how much easier and more comfortable that looks, and you're not having to stare at my armpit. So that is your bonus tip, is if you really get into drop spindling and you're like, man, my shoulder hurts, I totally recommend get yourself a distaff. So then you'll be cool like all the ancient Roman ladies.